Hello and welcome back to another episode of Bitesize Cinema. I'm your host RJ McCready, and for this episode I'm going to be taking you guys back to a year in 1992, and we're going to be going back to the medieval times, the medieval dead with Bruce Campbell. That's right guys, it's going to be the Army of Darkness. So let's fire out that boomstick, let's get the chainsaw going, let's play that trailer and let's go carve ourselves a witch. So I'll see you guys soon.
In an age of darkness.
May God have mercy upon your souls.
Something's wrong. Something's amiss.
And a time of evil.
You shall die!
When the world needed a hero.
They'll swallow us all.
I don't want to die!
What it got was him.
Groovy. You know your shoelace is untied.
He's a 20th century guy.
For that arrogance, I shall see you dead.
Trapped in the Middle Ages.
All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up. This is my boomstick.
Now, let's talk about how I get back home.
Foretold by a mystical book.
Within its pages are passages that can send you back to your time.
Forewarned by a wise man.
You must recite the words Klaatu, Berata, Niktu.
I got it.
Fulfilled by a wise guy.
Klaatu, Barada.
When thou misspoke the words, the army of the dead awoke.
Now he's got a date.
Give me some sugar, baby.
With the army of darkness.
You found me beautiful once.
Honey, you got real ugly.
Sound the trumpets. Raise the drawbridge. Drop the Oldsmobile. From Sam Raimi.
Oh, that's gonna hurt.
Director of Darkman. Comes Army of Darkness. They live. They breathe. They suck. Army of Darkness.
And welcome back guys. So the synopsis for this film is a man is accidentally transported back to the 1300 AD, where he must battle an army of the dead and retrieve the Necronomicon so he can return home. It's got an 81-minute runtime, and it's classed as a dark horror fantasy comedy directed by the legendary Sam Raimi. So let's have a quick talk about that. So talk about Sam Raimi, Bruce Campbell, Ivan Raimi and Robert Tappert. So they were three friends who made a budget horror movie called Within the Woods back in 1978. And with only a small budget of $1,600 and over a 3-day weekend, they managed to make a movie that impressed film directors of Hollywood, and impressed them so much that they said, here's $90,000 to go and make a movie. And they wanted to go and make The Evil Dead back in 1979. And then this went on to go and gross $2.4 million in the US and $2.7 million worldwide. And it gained popular cult status amongst horror fans, and is now one of the most significant cult films of all time. And it's classed as one of the greatest horror movies and probably one of the most successful independent films. And then on top of that, the Evil Dead franchise has spawned video games, comic books, a massive media franchise. It went on to go and make obviously the Army of Darkness, which I'm about to talk about, and then they were talking about a fourth movie, but instead of that they ended up making a remake of The Evil Dead, and then the fourth film has kind of become a TV show, which again has become successful. And then on top of all that, I mean, Bruce Campbell's become like a cult icon in the horror industry, with loads of quotes, and he's probably one of the greatest B-movie actors out there, and I don't know anybody that doesn't like Bruce Campbell. He's got an awful lot of time for his horror fans. He goes to a lot of Comic Con conventions all around the world, and having read his autobiography, If Chins Could Kill, I think Bruce Campbell, the impression I get with him is what you see is what you get, and I think he's as much of Ash Williams as Bruce Campbell. So the character there that you're getting on screen is Bruce Campbell. So he's on the list of one of the people I'd like to meet. So hopefully one day that will happen. But going back to the movie, Army of Darkness, so that's kind of like the origins of how they got to Army of Darkness. It took a little while to get there. So Sam Raimi made a movie called Darkman with Liam Neeson as the main lead, and that was attached to Universal Studios. And he made a deal with Universal Studios to make a free picture deal with Dino De Laurentiis. And I didn't know Dino De Laurentiis was actually attached to the Army of Darkness. For some of you listening who don't know who Dino De Laurentiis is, he's the guy who directed Flash Gordon and Conan the Barbarian movies. So he's another sort of cult director in the industry. So he was a fan of The Evil Dead. He wanted to back it up, and like I say, you had this free picture deal with Universal, and Darkman was successful at the cinema. And just a little bit of a segue there, I like this story with Sam Raimi, is that he actually wanted to make a Batman movie, but he couldn't get the rights to it, so instead he made Darkman, and Darkman is kind of like his own character. And it's another great Sam Raimi movie, so go check it out if you haven't seen it. But then going back here, so because Darkman was successful, Universal said, right, here we go, it's $11 million. Go and make Army of Darkness. And the only clause that Universal had with that $11 million that they were giving Sam to make this movie was that they wouldn't allow him to call this The Evil Dead 3. Originally, Sam wanted to call it The Evil Dead 3, The Army of Darkness. And the other thing that they pretty much gave him free rein to do what he wanted with this film and give him creative rights, which I'm quite a big fan of when it comes to directing, having not directed a film myself, but I like that. The only thing that they they did interfere with was the ending. So Sam wanted the downbeat ending with Ash ending up in the future where it's all wrecked, but they said that they wanted a more upbeat ending, so this is where you get Ash as the kind of cheesy action hero in the S-Mart store. So you get a couple of different endings here, but as it turns out, I quite like both endings. The options are both, so you get the downbeat one and then the cheesy action hero Ash. So as that turns out, it worked out okay in the end. So on the whole, Sam Raimi, it took him a little while to get to with this movie to create this film, but in the end they got there. And the other thing I was going to mention here was it's one of those things that's staring you right in the face, but you don't realise until you have a look on the internet when you're trying to do your podcast and you look at how this film was made. And it says that Sam Raimi was inspired by films like The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, Conan, Jason, The Argonauts, and obviously The Three Stooges. I know The Three Stooges, but all the other films there. It is now, when I think about it, it's quite evident, especially, I guess, those old Harryhausen movies with a hero trying to get somewhere and find, I suppose, a bit like Jason in the Golden Fleece, where Ash is trying to look for the Necronomicon to try and get back home. And then, of course, you've got the Ray Harryhausen stop motion that's used in this film, but which wasn't created by Ray, obviously, but Sam Raimi was a big fan of this type of effect, so he's used it in the movie. And let's have a quick talk about the music in this film. So you had Joseph Loduca, who composed the music for The Evil Dead 1 and 2. He came back to do the score for this film. And you've also got Danny Elfman from Oingo Boingo. He did the March of the Dead. And then a little bit of trivia here, guys. You've got tobacco smoke, which was used for Ash's chainsaw, just to keep that effect going. The film was released in Japan as Captain Supermarket. There you go. I guess I can kind of get that. And what else you got here? You got Clarato Verato Nictu. That was taken from the 1951 movie The Day the Earth Stood Still, which is a sci-fi movie. Bill Moseley and Patricia Tallman. Now they're two actors from Tom Savini's Night of the Living Dead. I'm gonna get you, Barbara. So Bill Moseley plays the Deadite captain, and Patricia Tallman, she plays the possessed witch. I never knew that. I only just found that out looking at the trivia for this film. And obviously the good old 1973 Oldsmobile Delta 88 that turns up in this movie, which has turned up in all Sam Raimi's movies because that's his car, and it is his little Easter egg which turns up. And the last thing that I'll mention before I have a look at the bite-sized review of this film is that they've been toying about bringing in two other horror icons with Ash, and that is Jason Voorhees and Freddy Krueger, and they've been talking about making a Jason versus Freddy versus Ash. So whether that will ever come into fruition, I don't know, but if it does, I think that might be a cool movie, so we'll have to wait and see. So let's have a look at this film then, eh? Bruce Campbell versus the Evil Dead, or the Army of Darkness. So what you get here at the beginning of the film is a retread of the Evil Dead 2. So if you haven't seen any of the Evil Dead films and you watch the Army of Darkness, you get a catch up right at the beginning, and it tells you all what's happened to Ash and all what he's been through, and in the end he is transported back to the Middle Ages because this tunnel came back big time, and along with his chainsaw and his shotgun and his Delta 88 he goes back to 1300 AD, and he is caught up between Duke Henry and Arthur, who are at war with each other, and Ash is enslaved by Arthur, thinking that he's one of Henry's men, and he's had his gun and his chainsaw taken away from him. And after he says to King Henry, "Well, hello Mr. Fancy Pants," Ash is chucked down the pit and he has to fight a couple of deadites. But to help him, the old wise man of Arthur realises that Ash is the man written on the old text, which is eventually going to help him. He reunites him with his chainsaw and his gun, and you get Ash Williams as the badass. We saw him in the Evil Dead 2. Takes out the deadites and regains himself back up to the top of the pit, where you get the best of Ash, one of the best lines. After capturing the attention of the audience with the firing of his boomstick, where he comes out and says, "Alright you primitive nutheads, listen up. Now I swear if any of you even touches me," and then as he says this he turns around and he shoots one of the deadites back into the pit, and then he sort of rolls the boomstick over and puts it in and he just sort of blows it and he goes, "Okay, let's talk about Get Me Home." So now Ash is celebrated as a hero and he falls for Sheila, who is one of Arthur's fallen knight's sisters. "Give me some sugar, baby." He then finds out through the Holy Wise Man that the only way he's going to return home is through the magical Necronomicon Ec Mortis, which caused all this problem from the start. So now his quest to go and retrieve the Nemicon Ec Mortis, he has a horse, a medieval outfit, and a new medieval hand, which is pretty cool. But before he sets off on this quest, he is told very specifically from the Holy Wise Man that he has to utter the words Klaatu Verata Nictu, but Ash being Ash is yeah, okay, I got it, and he just storms off and rides into the magical forest. When he enters the haunted forest, he comes across an old windmill, and this is where you get classic Ash, where he has to fight himself after hitting into a mirror. You get several different little mini Ashes turn up, little mini evil Ashes that he has to fight, and he's almost got that sort of Three Stooges moment. But then one of them clones him and then manages to get away, which comes into the story later on. So then after escaping the windmill, he manages to find the Necronomicon. And Ash, being Ash, he's forgotten the lines and he's got most of it there, where he got a classic scene of him going, Klaatu Verata, and he's gone, Nectar! He starts coughing. And he thinks he's got away with it, so he grabs the book and he runs back to the castle. But meanwhile, the clone resurrected version of Ash, the evil Ash, has formed an army of darkness, an army of skeletons. So then Ash returns back to Arthur the Necronomicon and he says, look, that's it, I've done the quest, I want to go back home. But then he finds out that Sheila has been abducted by a flying deadite and she's been transformed into a deadite. So Ash agrees to marshal the army against the deadite army of darkness. And with the aid of this, he uses the knowledge from some old textbooks that he had in his 1973 Oldsmobile. So he's got some chemistry books which enable him to make some modern day weapons, including some rockets and some bombs. And he turns the Oldsmobile into something like out of the A-Team, where he turns it into a fighting tank, I suppose you could say. So with the enlisted help of Duke Henry and Arthur joining forces to fight the Deadites, Ash successfully leads the army against defeating the Deadites, and he takes on his evil self and he manages to rescue Sheila. And what you get here is some pretty good Ash Williams, where he meets up with Sheila and she says, well, you found me beautiful once, and he comes in and says, honey, you got real ugly. So he gets some really good Ash moments here, and he's beginning to form into a hero here. And as he started out as an outcast at the beginning of this movie, Henry, Arthur and all the people have hailed Ash as a hero. But even though he has the hero status and a beautiful woman, he still wants to get back to his own time. So he sees the holy wise man that puts him into a cave, and he says, you have to put these drops into your mouth and this will get you back into the future. But then again, Ash being Ash, he does it again. He's like, 15 drops, couple of drops, and he just goes, oh, I'll have a couple more. And then this is where you get the two different endings. So you've got Ash waking up in the future to a sort of apocalyptic world where everything's been wiped out. And then you kind of got like the cheesy Ash who turns up in the S-Mart store and he's talking to Linda, his girlfriend, who is played by Bridget Fonda. And as he's telling her the story, he's basically reciting this story of what's happened to him. He says at the end, he goes, then I became the king. But as he's telling this story, a Deadite turns up in the store and he gets his Winchester rifle, and it's a pretty cool scene where he's slaying the creature, which he manages to do. And then in the end he goes, sure, I could have stayed in the past, could have even been king, but my way, I am a king. And then he kisses Linda, and then he just says one of the last lines right at the end, he is, hail to the king, baby. And then the film ends with the great film score by Joseph Lo-Duca, which goes really well with this movie. So that's it. So in some ways you didn't get a full film, but what you did get is this last scene here, that ending there with him in the S-Mart store, sort of ties off into the great TV show that we got. So all in all, I think us Evil Dead fans have had a great treat with that TV show of late, and I don't think that will be the last we will see of Ash Williams. I think there might be another movie, something like that, so we will have to see. I don't think that's the last we'll see of Ash. So that's it, guys. That is The Army of Darkness. It's, I suppose after reviewing it, when I look at it, it's actually quite a short film, but it gets you from point A to B. It does everything it needs to do. It's a fun movie. I don't think it's the favourite of the franchise. I think number 2 is the favourite, possibly number 1. But it's, all in all, it's a great trilogy of films and a great franchise. So I can't give this film enough praise. You can probably hear in my voice. It's a really great instalment for us horror fans in this genre. So, and as I said earlier, Ash Williams, he is the everyday guy, and I think that's why people like him. He's a relatable character. He's a guy that works in the supermarket, and he's a hero. And he doesn't become a hero straight away. He has to go through a lot to become that hero, but he gets there in the end, and he's got his one-liners. He's just an incredible, likeable guy. So that's it. Hail to the king, baby. There you go. That is Ash Williams. I have no doubt that I will return to this franchise, because I will probably do the Evil Dead 1 and 2 in the future. So I think I'll be returning back to this sometime soon. So there you go, guys. Hope you enjoyed the show. Let's tell you what I'll be doing next. I'm going to be looking at John Carpenter again. It's a film that I've been wanting to talk about for quite a long time now. It's the cult classic 1981 movie Escape from New York. So John Carpenter again. I can't help myself. So look out for that. I'll be recording that one soon. And a little bit of admin for the show. You can find my show on iTunes. I think I'm on Stitcher. You can find it on there. I'm on YouTube. And you can find the show on the Legion Podcast Network. And I've also got a Facebook page, so I've got a great Facebook page. Lots of stuff going on there, lots of good posts and comments and things like that. So we're having a lot of fun there. And that is it. So keep it safe, keep it bite-sized, and I'll see you guys soon.
If you enjoyed this show, then make sure you check out the other great shows on the Legion Podcast Network, like Cinema Psyops, Cinema Beef, Devour the Podcast, Duncan and Bo Come Correct, Exploding Heads Horror Movie Podcast, Friday the 13th, Get Slayed, The Hellming Power Hour, Hello, This is the Doom Show, Hero Hero Go Show, Kill the Cast, Underwater Kaiju from Outer Space, Jerry Hates Action, Legion After Dark, Mental Health, Obsessive Cinema, Discourse, Pick 6 Movies, the podcast by The Cemetery, the podcast on Haunted Hill, the Psychosemantic podcast, Rick Radio, House of Wax, Dude Looks Like the 80s, Rabbit and Red Radio, the Shadecast, Short Bus Cinema, 2 Drink Minimum Commentaries, the VD Clinic, Who Will Survive Horror Podcast, and Witch vs. the Doomsday Clock. With such a wide spread of shows, there is guaranteed to be a niche for you to fall in love with. Horror, politics, movies, books, sex, music, commentaries, health, video games, kaiju, action, news, comedy, and opinions that would most likely get you killed in some parts of the world. We are proud to bring you some of the best podcasting in the world. Check us out at www.legionpodcast.com, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, and any other dark corner of the internet where podcasts can be found.